The night was calm, yet the city seemed alive in a way that mirrored the quiet beating of Sandra Bullock's heart. It was her birthday, a day that came every year, but this one felt different. As the clock moved closer to evening, she found herself standing in front of the mirror, not to admire her beauty, but to wonder about the passage of time. Birthdays can be both celebrations and reminders. They remind us of how far we've come and sometimes whisper questions we don't want. To hear Sandra had lived a life filled with success, applause, and the warmth of fans all over the world. Yet in that moment, behind closed doors, she felt a wave of silence that fame could never cure. Her children had already wished her. Her close friends had sent flowers, but there was still a space in her heart. It was not about gifts or parties. It was about connection, about being seen in a way that went beyond the lights of Hollywood. And then there was Keanu Reeves. Their bond was not new. It had roots in the past, from the time they worked together, when both of them were younger, standing under the hot lights of movie sets, carrying characters that lived in the hearts of millions. Over the years, the bond had softened, deepened, and taken the shape of something unspoken: respect. Respect that did not need words, humility that did not need to be shown off, kindness that lived quietly between them. But what Sandra did not know was that Keanu had been planning something for weeks. He was not the man who walked into a store and bought the most expensive gift. He was not the type to dazzle with diamonds or grand parties. His gift was different. It was something no one else could give her, something built from thought, patience, and understanding of who she truly was beneath the star image. As evening fell, Sandra received a message, short, almost mysterious yet warm. It simply read, "Step outside." Her heart skipped a beat. She knew who it was from. She walked through her house, past the soft lights, past the stillness, and opened the door. What she saw took her breath. Away. There stood Keanu, dressed in the simplest way possible. His black suit not loud but graceful, his expression calm, yet carrying a depth that could touch the strongest walls around a heart. In his hand was not a box wrapped in glitter, not a bouquet large enough to cover his face. Instead, he held something else, an old, worn book, the kind that carried not just words but history, memory, and weight. "Happy birthday," he said softly, almost like a whisper carried by the night wind. Sandra blinked, her eyes already moist, not because of what he brought, but because of how he stood there, without pride, without a show, just a man who cared enough to give something real. But before she could ask about the book, Keanu stepped aside and pointed toward the street. There was a quiet hum, and then she saw it. A simple old car, the same model from their first movie together, restored to perfection. Standing under the streetlight. For a second, Sandra froze. Memories came rushing back. The days on set, the laughter, the moments when they were just two, young actors trying to make sense of their lives. "I thought," Keanu said gently, "maybe tonight should not be about today. Maybe it should be about remembering where it all began." Her lips parted, but no words came out. The gesture was too much, too deep, too layered to be captured in a simple thank you. As they walked toward the car, Sandra's hands trembled slightly. She had expected nothing more than a few birthday wishes, maybe a quiet dinner. But this was a gift of memory, a reminder that life was not measured by numbers or candles, but by the connections that stayed alive through time. Yet even as she smiled, her heart carried a small flicker of fear. Because sometimes when life gives you a perfect moment, it hides something waiting in the shadows. She did not know it yet, but tonight was only the beginning. Asterisk. The car stood under the streetlight like a silent witness from the past, its polished surface glowing softly in the night air. Sandra's eyes refused to move away. She remembered sitting, Inside that very model during filming, the laughter echoing, the nervousness of lines, the quiet breaks between takes when Keanu would tell her stories that made her forget she was an actress and feel like a simple girl sharing a ride with a friend. As she touched the cool metal, her hand trembled. The years had been long, filled with triumphs and storms, but that moment connected her back to a time when life was simpler. Keanu watched her silently, his face carrying no expectation of praise. He only stood there, allowing her the space to feel, to remember. "Keanu," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You kept this?" He shook his head. "Not the same one. But I found it, restored it, because I thought you'd want to sit inside again, like before." A long silence followed, heavy, yet strangely comforting. In that silence, memories seemed to speak louder than words. Keanu opened the car door and gestured for her to sit. As Sandra stepped in, she felt her heart pounding like it had when she was much younger. The leather seat smelled faintly of age and polish. The steering wheel looked almost the same. Everything about it was familiar, yet carrying the weight of years gone by. "Where are we going?" she asked softly. "Somewhere that matters," Keanu replied with a gentle smile, turning the key. The engine roared softly, steady and alive. As though even the machine knew it was carrying something more than just two people. The streets rolled past them, filled with the quiet lights of the city. Sandra kept glancing at Keanu, noticing the way his hands rested on the wheel. Calm, steady, almost protective. He wasn't speaking much, but that was his way. His silence was not emptiness. It was respect. Giving her space to breathe. As they drove, Sandra felt a storm rising inside her. Her birthday had already been filled with calls, messages, and celebrations, but nothing felt as raw, as personal as this. And yet, underneath the warmth of the gift, she sensed a question forming in her heart. Why now? Why this moment? She looked out of the window, watching the blur of lights. "Keanu, why did you do this? Why go through so much trouble?" He did not answer immediately. His eyes stayed on the road, his silence stretching longer than she expected. Then, finally, he spoke in a low voice that made her heart ache. "Because memories are not just memories. They remind us who we really are. And sometimes, we need that reminder more than anything else." His words struck her deeply. She turned. To him, her eyes searching his face. There was something hidden there, something unspoken. It wasn't just about her birthday. He was carrying something too. Something heavy. "What about you?" she asked carefully. "What do you need to be reminded of?" Keanu let out a faint breath as though fighting with himself. But instead of answering, he turned the car down a narrow road. It was darker here, quieter, away from the noise of the city. Sandra's curiosity grew stronger. Her heart raced with anticipation, but also with a faint trace of fear. Finally, they arrived at a small theater, old and almost forgotten, its paint fading, its lights dim. Yet to Sandra, it looked oddly familiar. She gasped. This is where we came after shooting Wrapped, isn't it?" Keanu nodded. "Yes, our first movie together. We sat here in the back row, just two people. No cameras, no audience, no fame. Just us. I thought tonight, you should remember that." Sandra's eyes filled with tears. She hadn't thought about that night in years. They had sat there, exhausted but happy, eating popcorn from the same bag, laughing about their mistakes, dreaming about the future that was still unknown. And now, here she was again, with the same man, at the same place, but with lives that had changed in unimaginable ways. Keanu parked the car and got out, then opened her door with quiet grace. His kindness was never loud, but it always carried weight. As they stepped into the theater. The air was thick with dust and memory. The seats were old, the smell of history heavy. Yet, in the middle of the hall, a small projector flickered to life. Sandra froze. On the screen appeared old clips, behind-the-scenes moments from their film together, shots of them laughing, stumbling over lines, whispering to each other between takes. Her hand covered her mouth. "Keanu, how?" He looked at her gently. "I kept them. I thought you'd want to see who you were back then. Who we were." The room was silent except for the flicker of the reel. Sandra sat slowly, her eyes locked on the screen. She saw herself, young, uncertain, glowing with energy she didn't know she had. She saw Keanu beside her, smiling in ways the world rarely saw, his eyes filled with care. Even then, tears slid down her face, unstoppable. It wasn't sadness. It was something deeper, a mixture of gratitude, longing, and the painful beauty of time. And then Keanu spoke again, softly, but with a weight that made her turn toward him. "But tonight is not just about the past, Sandra. There is something I need to tell you. Something I've carried for years." Her breath caught. His voice, his eyes, the silence between them. It all felt like the beginning of something that could change everything. The theater was quiet. Almost too quiet. The sound of the projector clicking in the background seemed louder than it should have been, like a heartbeat echoing in a vast, empty room. Sandra's eyes stayed fixed on Keanu. His words, "something I've carried for years," hung in the air, heavier than the dust, heavier than the memories on the screen. She felt her breath grow shallow. For a moment, she wondered if she even wanted to hear it. Sometimes the past holds things you think you're ready for, until they stand in front of you. "Keanu," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What is it?" He didn't answer immediately. His gaze dropped, his fingers brushing against the worn leather seat beside him. His silence wasn't emptiness. It was struggle. She could feel it. It was as though he was fighting with himself, trying to decide if revealing this secret would heal something, or break it forever. Finally, He looked up, his eyes glistening, in the dim light. "Do you remember that night after the premiere?" he asked softly. Sandra searched her memory. The night had been long, filled with cameras, applause, the chaos of fans and flashing lights. But later, when it was all over, yes, she remembered sitting with him on the hood of a car, eating fries out of a paper bag, laughing like two kids who didn't know what tomorrow would bring. "Of course," she said, her lips trembling into a faint smile. Keanu nodded, his expression tightening. "That night, I almost told you something I wanted you to know. But I was afraid it would change everything between us." Sandra's heart raced. Her mind tried to guess. Was it about love? About regret? About something she had forgotten but he had carried? "And all these years," he continued, "I thought maybe time would wash it away. But it never did. And now, tonight, sitting here, I can't keep it anymore." His words burned into her heart. Her fingers gripped the armrest of the seat. "Then tell me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please, tell me." Keanu inhaled deeply, his chest rising with the weight of the moment. "I loved you, Sandra. I loved you back then. And maybe a part of me never stopped." The words fell like stones into a still lake, sending ripples across every corner of her being. Sandra froze, her entire body trembling. She had imagined this moment before, in quiet corners of her mind, in fleeting what-ifs. But hearing it now, on her birthday, in this forgotten theater, with their past playing behind them, was overwhelming. Her eyes filled with tears, her throat tight. She didn't know whether to cry, to smile, or to run. Keanu's gaze didn't waver. I never told you because you deserved freedom. You deserved to live, to love, without carrying my feelings on your shoulders. I respected you too much to take that away, but sometimes silence becomes its own burden, and mine has been heavy for too long. The room seemed to spin around Sandra. Memories came rushing in. The quiet moments on set, the way his eyes lingered longer than they should have, the way his presence always felt steady, safe, even when everything else in life was chaotic. Had she missed the signs? Or had she simply been too afraid to see them? Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her tears slipped freely down her cheeks, falling onto her hands. Keanu leaned forward slightly, his voice softer than ever. I don't expect anything. Not tonight, not ever. I just needed you to know, because life is too short to keep truths locked away. His words cut through her like lightning. He was right. Life was too short, too fragile, too unpredictable. And yet, even in the middle of her shock, she felt another emotion rising inside her, fear. Fear not of him, but of herself. Because deep down, she had felt something too, long ago. She had buried it under time, under work, under the need to keep moving. The projector flickered behind them, casting shadows across the screen. Their younger selves smiled, laughed, froze mid-scene in their innocence. But here they were, older, wiser, and standing on the edge of something far more complicated. Sandra wiped her eyes quickly, trying to breathe. Keanu, she whispered, her voice trembling. Why tonight? Why tell me this now? He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them with a truth she had not expected. Because birthdays remind us how short our time is, and I couldn't let another year pass with you not knowing. The words hit her harder than anything. Her chest ached, her hands trembled. She felt as though she had been thrown into a storm, one that carried both beauty and danger. But before she could respond, before she could even begin to untangle the web of feelings inside her, the theater door creaked open. Both of them turned sharply. A shadow appeared in the doorway, tall, hesitant, almost out of place in the silence of the hall. Sandra's heart skipped a beat. Who's there? She asked, her voice echoing against the walls. The figure stepped forward slowly, and as the dim light touched his face, Sandra gasped. It was someone she never expected to see on her birthday night. Someone from her past who had the power to change everything Keanu had just confessed. The theater was already heavy with silence, but when the door creaked open and the figure stepped into the dim light, that silence thickened into something almost unbearable. Sandra's breath caught in her throat. Keanu's eyes sharpened, his usual calmness turning into alertness. The flickering projector cast shifting shadows across the stranger's face, slowly revealing features that dragged both of them into the weight of old memories. It was Jesse, a man Sandra had once cared for deeply, someone she had thought was long gone from her world. Years had passed since they had spoken, years since their paths had crossed. Yet here he was, standing in the same room on the very night Keanu had chosen to reveal his truth. Sandra's heart pounded. The collision of past and present left her, shaken. Keanu remained still, his face unreadable, but his silence carried tension, as though he was already preparing for the storm that might follow. Jesse's voice broke the silence. It was low, hesitant, but filled with something she couldn't yet name. I didn't mean to interrupt. His eyes shifted from Sandra to Keanu, then back to Sandra. I just thought, maybe tonight, you'd want to hear me out. Sandra blinked, struggling to process the moment. She whispered, Why now, after all these years? Jesse stepped further into the light, his eyes raw with emotion. Because birthdays remind us of what we've lost, too, and I've carried my silence for far too long." His words echoed Keanu's confession moments earlier, almost like fate had planned this collision. Sandra felt trapped between two truths, one revealed by Keanu, born from quiet respect and unspoken love, and another that was now about to be laid bare by Jesse. Keanu remained seated, his calmness almost protective, but Sandra could feel the storm brewing between them. Two men from different chapters of her life, both carrying secrets that refused to stay hidden. Jesse finally looked directly at Sandra. His voice cracked. "I left because I was afraid. I thought I couldn't stand beside someone like you. You're light. It scared me. But walking away has been the greatest mistake of my life. And tonight, I couldn't stay silent anymore." Sandra's chest tightened. The theater felt smaller, the walls closing in. The screen still flickered behind them, showing younger versions of herself and Keanu, laughing carelessly, while in front of her stood two men burdened with truths that carried the power to reshape everything she thought she knew about herself. Keanu finally spoke, his voice steady but sharp enough to cut the silence. "You've had years to say this. Why now? On her birthday?" Jesse turned toward him, his jaw tightening. "Maybe for the same reason you chose tonight. Because life doesn't wait forever. And because she deserves to know." The air grew heavier. Sandra felt like her heart was being pulled in two directions, her mind drowning in memories and possibilities. She wanted to speak, to ask them both to stop, but her voice refused to come. Jesse took another step closer, his eyes pleading. "Sandra, I don't expect forgiveness. I need you to know the truth. I never stopped caring for you. I thought pushing you away would protect you, but all it did was break me." Her tears welled again, but this time they came from confusion. Her mind replayed Keanu's words, his quiet confession of love, his patience, his silence that spoke louder than any grand gesture. And now, Jesse's words echoed in her ears, filled with regret and desperation. Asterisk. The projector clicked, louder, almost like a drumbeat marking the weight of every second. Sandra finally found her voice. "Both of you. Why now? Why tonight? Do you realize what you're doing to me?" The men fell silent. Keanu's eyes softened, his calmness returning. "Because the truth deserves its moment, Sandra. And maybe tonight was meant for that." Jesse lowered his head, ashamed. "I just didn't want to disappear again without saying what I should have said years ago." Sandra stood slowly, her body trembling, the weight of both confessions pressed against her chest, but beneath the confusion she felt something else rising inside her, strength. Strength to face the truths, to confront the pain, and to demand clarity for herself. "Enough," she said firmly, her voice stronger than she expected. "This is my birthday, my night. And if you've both chosen this moment to pour your hearts out, then I deserve the space to breathe, to feel, and to decide what this means for me." Her words hung in the air, powerful, commanding. Both men looked at her with respect, their silence acknowledging her strength. Asterisk, but deep inside, Sandra knew the night was far from over, because secrets once revealed never settle easily. They ripple, they collide, they demand resolution. And as she stood there, her tears drying on her cheeks, she realized something even more unsettling. There was still another truth, hidden deeper, waiting to rise. A truth she hadn't even admitted to herself. Asterisk, the flickering projector cast, broken light across the theater walls, as if the past itself was trying to break free. Sandra stood between Keanu and Jesse, her hands trembling slightly, but her voice firm. She had demanded space, demanded clarity, but now the silence pressed in heavier than before. It was not just about their truths anymore. It was about hers. Truths. She had buried so deep she sometimes pretended they never existed. Her chest tightened. She turned her back to them for a moment, staring at the screen where her younger self laughed carelessly. That version of her seemed like a stranger now. Innocent, fearless, untouched by heartbreak. She wished she could step back into that frame, but time does not move backward. Her voice broke the silence, softer than before. You both carried your secrets, but so did I. Keanu's eyes lifted toward her, calm but watchful. Jesse's jaw tightened, his expression shifting with unease. Sandra swallowed hard, her throat dry. Do you know what it feels like to smile for the world, while hiding the truth from yourself? I've done it for years. I told myself I was strong, that I had everything: success, love, family. But deep inside, there's always been a hollow space, and I never admitted why. Her words hung heavy, pulling both men closer into her pain. She turned slowly, facing them, her tears glistening in the dim glow. I felt something for both of you. I did, but I buried it. Because I was afraid of what the truth would cost me. Afraid of ruining friendships. Afraid of choosing wrong. Afraid of being judged for what I felt. So I smiled. I laughed. I moved. Forward. But inside I carried silence just like you did. Keanu's face softened, his eyes almost breaking with emotion. Jesse's shoulders slumped as though her words pierced through his defenses. So when you both walked in tonight with your confessions, Sandra continued, her voice trembling, you weren't the only ones exposing yourselves. You forced me to face what I've been running from. And it hurts. It hurts because maybe the timing was never right. Maybe fate always found a way to keep us apart. But tonight I can't hide anymore. Her honesty filled the room like a tidal wave, raw and unstoppable. The projector hummed louder, the images of their younger days still dancing on the screen as if mocking the present with their simplicity. Keanu took a step forward, his voice gentle. Sandra, you don't have to choose. You don't owe us an answer tonight. All you owe yourself is truth. And if tonight helps you face it, then it's enough. Jesse shook his head, his voice strained with desperation. No, she deserves more than that. She deserves to know what her own heart wants, not just what we want from her. Their words clashed like waves against her, but Sandra raised her hand, silencing them both. Her strength was growing now, not in the absence of pain, but in the courage to face it. This isn't about choice, she said firmly. It's about honesty. And the truth is, I've been afraid to admit how much kindness means to me. Not the big gestures, not the glamorous promises, but the small things, the quiet respect, the patience, the way someone shows love not with words but with presence. Her eyes lingered on Keanu, his silence, his calmness, his gift of memory. It all came rushing back to her. She remembered the countless small moments he had given her over the years, moments the world never saw. Jesse noticed the shift in her gaze. His voice cracked. So it was always him. Sandra shook her head, tears spilling again. No, Jesse, it wasn't always him. There was a time I thought it was you. There was a time when my heart wanted to believe you were the one. But love cannot survive on regret. It needs presence. It needs truth in the moment, not years later. And you weren't there. Jesse's shoulders sagged, his eyes filling with defeat. The weight of his past choices pressed visibly against him. Keanu remained still, not victorious, not smug, just quiet, as though he knew the moment wasn't his to claim. Sandra drew in a deep breath, her voice shaking but strong. Maybe I don't have all the answers tonight. Maybe I don't know what tomorrow will bring. But what I do know is that my life is too short to carry silence anymore. If I feel something, I will say it. If I need someone, I won't pretend otherwise. I can't keep living half-truths. The room fell into silence again, but this time it was different. Not suffocating, not heavy. It was the silence of release, of chains finally breaking. Jesse turned away, his eyes wet, his voice barely above a whisper. I lost my chance long ago. I see that now. He stepped back toward the door, his shadow fading into the dim light. Happy birthday, Sandra. I hope you find the peace I never could. The door creaked shut behind him, leaving only Sandra and Keanu in the theater. Her heart raced, her tears still fresh, but something inside her felt lighter, freer. She turned toward Keanu, who had not moved, his eyes still locked on her with that same steady patience. For a moment, no words were spoken, and yet everything was being said in the silence. The past, the love, the respect, the years of unspoken truth finally breaking open. The door closed softly behind Jesse, and with it, a chapter of Sandra's past seemed to close too. The theater was quiet again, but it was no longer suffocating. The silence felt fragile, like glass that could break with a single wrong word, yet it also carried a sense of relief, like the storm had passed and left behind a strange, calm stillness. Sandra stood there, her heart pounding, her hands still trembling from everything that had been said. The weight of years of silence had been lifted, but the release left her raw, exposed, and vulnerable. She turned slowly toward Keanu, who hadn't moved, his posture steady, his face lit softly by the fading glow of the projector. He didn't speak. He just looked at her with the same calm patience he always had. And in that look, Sandra saw everything. Kindness, respect, quiet love, and something even deeper. Safety. For the first time in years, she let herself breathe fully. Keanu, she whispered, her voice breaking. Do you know what you've given me tonight? He shook his head gently, his eyes searching hers. No. Tell me. Her tears spilled again, but this time they weren't born from confusion. They were born from clarity. You gave me truth. You gave me freedom. All these years I thought birthdays were about people bringing gifts or throwing parties. But tonight, you gave me something no one else could. You gave me myself back. Keanu's eyes glistened, but his voice remained soft. That's all I wanted, for you to see yourself the way you deserve to be seen. She took a step closer, her feet almost trembling against the worn theater floor. But what about you? You've carried this for so long. Don't you deserve to be seen too? For the first time, Keanu looked away, his jaw tightening, his composure almost breaking. I don't need anything in return, Sandra. Loving you has never been about expecting something back. It's about being grateful I had the chance to feel it at all. His humility, his refusal to demand, pierced her heart more deeply than any declaration could. She had spent years surrounded by noise, by people who wanted something from her, by demands that never ended. And here stood a man who gave without asking, who loved without chains, who respected her enough to let her choose her own truth. She reached out slowly, her hand trembling as she touched his face. But maybe, just maybe, it's time I stop running from what I've always known deep down. That you've been there, always there, quietly, patiently, waiting. Keanu's eyes closed for a moment under her touch, as though her words were both a balm and a weight lifting from his shoulders. When he opened them again, they glistened, raw and unguarded. The projector clicked once more before dying completely, leaving the room in near darkness. But in that darkness, their closeness glowed brighter than any light. They stood there. Two people no longer hiding, no longer bound by silence. Their past had spoken, their hearts had broken open, and now there was only truth between them. Sandra's voice was steady, filled with a strength she hadn't felt in years. This is the moment I'll never forget. Not because of the car, not because of the theater, not even because of the confessions, but because tonight I realized I don't need to carry fear anymore. I don't need to hide. I can finally be honest with you and with myself. Keanu smiled faintly, his voice tender. Then let this be your real gift tonight. Not from me, but from you to yourself. Her heart swelled. She leaned her head gently against his shoulder. The weight of years melting away in that single act of closeness. The night outside was quiet, the city lights faint in the distance. But in that abandoned theater, two souls found peace. For Sandra. This birthday was no longer about getting older. It was about beginning again. For Keanu. It was no longer about carrying silence. It was about finally letting the truth breathe. And together, in that fragile, perfect moment, they gave each other the only gift that truly lasts. Freedom, respect, and love that needed no stage, no applause, no spotlight.